Gemini 3.6 is putting out 304 tokens per second against 33 for Kimi K3, and Gemini costs half the price on top of that. So yeah, this one's not as close as the headlines suggest. Both models dropped recently, and people are already swapping stacks over them, so the stakes are real. I'm running Kimi K3 versus Gemini 3.6 across 5 real tests: search, speed, multimodal, reasoning, and pricing, and all numbers come from verified sources, no vendor spin. And honestly, the cheaper, faster model doesn't sweep this thing. Kimi K3 punches back hard in one test, and if that test matches your workflow, the price gap stops mattering pretty fast. So who's this actually for? Developers picking an API for a production app, or anyone paying monthly for an AI tool and wondering if they're on the wrong one, because get the model wrong and you're either burning money on tokens or shipping slow, shallow outputs, and that's a real cost, either way. Alright, so test 1, real-time information access and web search. When a model can't pull live data, it just makes stuff up, confidently, and you get a hallucinated stock price or a 6-month-old news story presented like it's current, which is pretty embarrassing when it ships to a real user. What I looked at here, both models have web search built in, so neither one is flying blind. Kimi K3 also has an explicit fetch tool for pulling specific URLs directly, while Gemini 3.6 doesn't document a dedicated fetch tool. So that capability is honestly unclear. And I want to be clear, that's a documentation gap, not a confirmed missing feature. I want to be straight with you guys. I didn't actually test search quality or latency here, so I can't tell you which one returns better results or faster. And the fetch tool advantage for Kimi K3 is real on paper. But whether it matters in practice really depends on your specific workflow. I was expecting one of them to pull ahead here, but the data just doesn't support that call. Both have live search, and the URL fetch gap is too undocumented to call, so test 1 is a tie. Scoreboard sits at Kimi K3 0, Gemini 3.6 0, 1 tied. Okay, so test 2, response speed and latency. Slow output kills user experience fast, because if your app is waiting 13 seconds before the first word even appears, users bounce. And if you're running high-volume API calls, a slower model means you're paying for compute time while your users sit there watching a spinner. What surprised me was just how wide the gap is. Gemini 3.6 clocks 304 tokens per second. Kimi K3 median is 33, so that's 9.2 times faster. And even on Fireworks, the fastest provider for Kimi, you're only hitting 162 tokens per second, which still doesn't touch Gemini's base rate. Now, Kimi K3's time to first token was 13.39 seconds on Fireworks, which is pretty rough, but Gemini 3.6's TTFT isn't published, so that part of the comparison is kind of a black box, and speed matters less if you're running async batch jobs where nobody's watching a cursor blink. Gemini 3.6 only takes this one, and it's not close. 9 times faster, output speed is a real number, and I honestly expected a gap, but not that big. Gemini 3.6 goes up 1 on the board. Kimi K3 0, Gemini 3.6 1 tied. Now, test 3, multimodal input support. Send the wrong file type and the whole pipeline breaks. You end up converting documents manually, re-uploading, burning time, and if your workflow touches audio files or Excel sheets and the model just rejects them, that's a broken integration, not a minor annoyance. Both handle images and video fine, no issue there, but Kimi K3 goes wider on documents. PDF, Word, Excel, TXT, Markdown, while Gemini 3.6 explicitly lists only PDF for documents but adds audio input, which Kimi K3 doesn't support at all. Honestly, it's kind of a wash depending on your use case, because Kimi K3 wins on document formats, Gemini 3.6 wins on audio, and neither one dominates across the board, so if you're not using audio at all, Kimi's document breadth might actually matter more to you day to day. I was expecting one of these to clearly own multimodal, but they split it right down the middle. Kimi K3 gets document formats, Gemini 3.6 gets audio, so neither one wins outright. Another tie, running score, Kimi K3 0, Gemini 3.6 1 2 tied. Alright, test 4, reasoning depth and complex analysis. Shallow reasoning is expensive in a different way because you get a plausible looking answer that's just wrong, and you don't catch it until it's already in production. And for coding tasks especially, a model that can't actually think through a problem costs you debugging hours, not just tokens. This is where Kimi K3 really surprised me. On Deep SWE, the agentic coding benchmark, Kimi K3 scored 67.5% against Gemini 3.6's 49%. So that's an 18.5-point gap. And Kimi K3 also defaults to max thinking mode, meaning it's going hard on every query without you having to toggle anything. Take it with a grain of salt though, because Gemini 3.6 scores 63.9% on MLE bench, and Kimi K3 doesn't have published numbers there, so Gemini is clearly competitive on certain reasoning tasks, and the benchmarks don't cover the same ground, which makes a clean head-to-head kind of tricky. Kimi K3 takes test 4. The deep SWE gap is 18.5 points on a directly comparable benchmark, and I honestly didn't expect Kimi to win by that margin. Scoreboard is now tied. Kimi K3 1, Gemini 3.6 1, 2 tied. Okay, so test 5, cost and pricing. Run 1 million tokens through the wrong model every day, and the difference compounds fast, because at scale, paying double for input and output tokens adds up to a budget line that someone's going to notice. Pretty straightforward here. Kimi K3 runs $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens, while Gemini 3.6 is $1.50 input and $7.50 output, which is exactly half, and Gemini also has cached input pricing at 0.15 per million dollar tokens that Kimi K3 doesn't publish at all. Gemini 3.6 wins pricing, and it's not subtle. Half the cost per token, plus a cash tier that Kimi K3 doesn't even list, and I was expecting a gap, but the cash pricing on top of the base discount is a real extra hit. Final score, Kimi K3 1, Gemini 3.6 2 tied. Kimi K3 wins on reasoning, and it's not close. Deep SWE 67.5% versus 49% is a real gap for coding tasks. It defaults to max thinking mode, so you don't have to configure anything, and if your workflow touches Word, Excel, or Markdown files, Kimi's document support is just broader. Gemini 3.6 wins on speed and cost, and both gaps are big. 9 times faster output, half the token price, and a cash tier at 0.15 per million tokens that Kimi K3 doesn't even match. And if you're processing audio, Gemini's the only one of the two that can handle it. Honestly, I went in thinking Gemini 3.6 would sweep this, and it didn't, because Kimi K3 earned its win on reasoning. So here's the decision rule. If you need fast, cheap API responses or you're processing audio, go Gemini 3.6, but if you're doing deep coding work or complex analysis, go Kimi K3, because 18 points on deep SWE is real.